Welcome to the Building Materials Sales and Marketing Podcast, presented by Mark Mitchell, a sales and marketing consultant who specializes in helping building materials companies overcome difficult sales problems. Mark is the author of the book Building Materials Channel Marketing and a frequent speaker at industry events.
Hello, this is Mark Mitchell from Wizard Strategy. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about facilities managers, which is primarily a commercial building product audience customer prospect. If you look at multifamily, it certainly is there. The facilities manager of a house, of course, is the individual homeowner. So we're going to talk, though, more about the commercial facilities manager. And I want to say, sound like an old school DJ today, but this goes out today to Joe Giardino, a rock star salesman from Owens Corning and future Santa Claus. I don't understand the future Santa Claus part, but he has that on his LinkedIn profile, and I just love it when people have a little personality in their LinkedIn profile. So, Joe, thank you for your comments, and hopefully you'll like today's podcast, find some value, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you at the AIA show this year. Well, let's first take a look at the facilities manager. You look and say, first of all, there's a facilities manager for existing buildings, and the facilities manager also has a role many times in the construction of a new building that people overlook. But let's first talk about the facilities manager overall. The facilities manager is one person who will defend a spec. If they've had bad luck with a particular type of product, a bad experience, either with the product itself or what they considered an inadequate response by a manufacturer to a problem, they will lay down the law and say, we will no longer use this type of product or a product from this company. And they can make that stick. The other one is that they are extremely interested in learning. They have to be experts in everything from snow removal to carpet cleaning and replacement to HVAC systems, graffiti removal, roofs, insulation, you just anything you can think of, doors. They have to be an expert in all those things. So they cannot be an expert in so many things. So every time I've called on a facilities manager, either by myself or with one of my manufacturer clients, I have found what a receptive audience we've always gotten when we start out by talking about, we want to teach you something. In fact, many times if it's a larger facilities department, like at a university, I've seen them stop the meeting and go walk down the hall and grab some more of their staff to come and sit in the meeting when we would walk them through something like single-ply roofing membranes or types of insulation or windows would be examples. So they're very hungry for knowledge. So you think about, it's kind of like a lunch and learn, except you can promote your product more within it when you do that. The other one that you got to keep in mind is that you could educate them based on that education that they believe that you have a great product and they're very interested in it. But what they will almost always do, and this is an existing building, almost always is they will say, here is my contractor's business card. If he likes this product, then I'll be good with it. So they will not, and many times, force their local contractor to use your product. They need the contractor to believe in it as well and be on board. And the reason for this is that they have leverage with the local contractor. They're important to that local contractor, much more important than they are to any manufacturer, and they know that. So they probably have, depending on the type of contractor, but if it's somebody like a roofing contractor, somebody that is there to fix problems, broken windows, they have that contractor's cell phone and can call them at 3 a.m. They know the contractor will be there for them. And they also know the contractor will never install something that would in any way put their relationship at risk. So if the contractor doesn't believe in your product or isn't comfortable with it, you're probably not going to sell it. So just because you see the facilities manager as being the boss, having the power, can get what they want, you have to keep in mind in many instances they're looking at, I won't do it without my contractor's blessing and support. So keep that in mind, that either you've identified and warmed up the contractor beforehand, or certainly count on that you want to find out from the facilities manager who his contractors are and then go connect with them. So that's a real important part of that. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that it's easy to assume, for example, that all facilities managers are interested in being greener or saving energy or sound control or something. And you can't make that generalization. What facilities managers are interested in is what their boss is interested in. So if the president of the university says to the facilities manager, I want to have the greenest university in North America, he's going to be very interested in green. If he says, I want a university that aesthetically appeals to incoming freshmen as they're deciding which school to go to, that's driving him. If the president is saying our operating costs are out of control, we need to reduce our operating and maintenance costs, that's going to be driving him. If the president says we're in for a rough year, our enrollment's dropping, we have to cut all costs and do things less expensively, that is another factor. So you want to keep in mind, don't make assumptions when you walk in there about everybody's going to, for example, want to be greener, because they personally may want to be greener, but it's really what their boss has told them they want. So keep that in mind as you do that. And what this is also about is doing your homework once again before you make a call. One way, of course, to do your homework is to go to that facility's website. What do you see there? What can you comment on? What do they say about themselves? They are the leading blank, blank, blank. What is that? And so do that. The next step to make sure you've done your homework is, if you are in the morning calling on a university, the afternoon calling on a hotel, the next morning calling on a hospital, you need to, hopefully you're not calling on 12 kinds of buildings, but maybe you are. If you are, you shouldn't be. You should be zeroing in on a fewer types of buildings where you can have a lot more knowledge than your competitive building materials salesperson about that type of building. So if you are calling on facilities managers of existing, let's say, hotels, you should be reading everything there is you can find about hotels, hotel facility management, to prepare yourself. And you'll be amazed at how quickly you will be viewed as a trusted expert simply because you've read a little bit about how hotels operate, the challenges they are facing today. And you don't have to be the expert. You can actually just be curious. You can just go in and say, gee, I was reading that hotels are facing an occupancy problem, or that millennials no longer are interested in staying in hotels, or you're losing business to Airbnb. Is that affecting you, or what are you doing about that? And it puts the discussion at a whole nother level. So do your homework. Try, if possible, to limit the types of buildings that you call on. And even if your company or boss won't let you do that, you yourself go ahead and pick not more than 3 types of buildings: healthcare, hotels, office buildings, for example, or multifamily, and do what you can to grow your knowledge about that. Now, I've been looking, and usually in most types of buildings, I can find an association, I can find a trade magazine that I can read, or blogs and so forth. The facilities managers overall seems a little tight with their information. Like they want you to join the Facilities Managers Association before they unlock all of their knowledge that you can get into. I know, the Builders Association, AIA, some of them do that as well. It just seems that learning about facilities managers is a little bit tougher than learning about builders or architects or roofing contractors. So, if you're all into this, you might want to join the Facilities Managers Association if your company will support that. Perhaps one person in your company can join and you can share information, or your company can join if facilities managers are an important target to you. There's also state and local facility manager associations that you can join and participate in and start to build relationships with these people. So you need to look at your product, and the first thing I'd look and say, is my product more dependent on retrofit or remodel repair sales than new construction? So certainly in the case of roofing, it's more dependent upon repair replacement than insulation. You're probably not going to add more insulation to a commercial building, so you're probably more focused on new construction. And also just, look at your, there's also some products probably like doors and things that just, or windows that just over time wear out, or technology's moved along to the point where they need to update something. So you've got a great market with facilities managers that I find when I talk to facilities managers, most building material companies only call on them when there is an opportunity. Like, I know this building is going to do this renovation, I better go call on that person. Where, for example, with a university facilities manager, they may be in charge of 100 buildings. They're constantly doing things. And some of them may be very small and may not be on your radar screen. But once they learn about your product, have a good experience with it, then as they go along and they have to do that 5 times a year, and every once in a while it's a big building, it's I find well worth your time to call on those people. So really think about the facilities manager when you're doing repair and replacement. Oh, one other thing, if you call on the facilities manager at a major university, there's one person, and then they'll have a department, and they'll belong to an association of university facilities managers. So there's many, and the other one is they talk to each other. So if you work hard and you get the facilities manager at Michigan State University to love your product, he will spread the word, or many times have no trouble with you telling other universities that he decided to do something, to use your product. So that's another way to look at it. Now, you can also look at facilities management in terms of, let's take a hotel where you could have certainly local facilities people. You quite frequently find in a city, you'll find one owner that likes the hotel business and owns 6, 8, 10 different hotels, and there may be a Hyatt, a Sheraton, a Hilton, a number of different brands and price point hotels. He'll probably have one facilities manager overlooking everything. Then certainly within each facility will be a person who may just simply be a handyman up to somebody that's a little more knowledgeable. So you want to kind of step back and take a look at the lay of the land and understand who is the owner, how is the facilities management organized. You certainly also have at the headquarters of any hotel company, like a Hilton, even though they don't own hotels, individual operators do, they will have people on their staff who certainly are very concerned about Hilton hotels being up to date and presenting the best image and reducing operating costs. And while they probably cannot force your product to be used, in most cases, they probably can really get the attention of all of the owners about here's something to look at. So it's all over the place in terms of how to go after these people. And it's based on a university, we'll say, where there's one person in charge of Michigan State versus Hilton Hotels, where you could, let's say, have 3 levels of people involved. You'll also find, and particularly in multifamily, you will find large multifamily owner-operators who, let's say they're in Dallas, Texas, but they could own 40, 50, 60 large multifamily developments in 12 different cities. So once again, you've got a local person who may be more on the lines of a handyman, and then you'll certainly have somebody at headquarters who is representing everybody. Now, that's a challenge if you're a local salesperson. You see, in Denver, there's an opportunity, but the real decision is made in Dallas. They're probably not viewed as a national account. So how do you get, your company's probably not going to give you the airfare to fly to Dallas, and the Dallas rep may not be too interested because they could be in Dallas and not own any apartment buildings there. So things just to think about how to work your way through this. Another one to keep in mind about the facilities managers, if you kind of think about, I don't know, I love to think about what's a day in the life of this customer like? What's keeping them up at night? What are they pulling their hair out? What are the 30 things that are more important to them than specifying your product? And if you think about the facilities manager gets blamed for everything. So if the heating isn't working, the facilities manager gets the blame. If it is working, no one notices, and the facilities manager doesn't get the credit. So the facilities manager rarely gets a pat on the back or credit when things are going well because nobody notices they're going well. But the minute there's something that goes wrong, it's their problem. So they'll have items certainly that they've budgeted and planned, and they do their best job. They can walk through one of their facilities and look at it and say, next year we should do this. We should replace all these doors. Let's begin to get an estimate and figure out what kind of door we want and so forth. But then we'll come along where something they hadn't planned on happens. I was at a university in Atlanta talking to their facilities manager and team with the local salesperson from one of my client building material manufacturers. And he didn't look like he'd slept too well. And we asked him what was up. And he said, well, at 3 a.m, he got a phone call that the roof was leaking directly over the university president's desk and water was dripping onto his desk. So he had to jump out of bed, get that roofing contractor's cell phone number, get the roofing contractor up on the roof, and then also get his I assume janitorial team to get in there and clean up the president's office before the president, showed up that morning. And so these unplanned things also happen a lot, and they're looking for who can jump through hoops to fix things. And they don't think of the manufacturers being able to jump through hoops. If your product is something that would benefit from you jumping through hoops, but I was talking to a facilities manager last week, and I think they're in Wyoming, and they talked about a particular manufacturer and how they really appreciated that if they needed something, and these tended to be more accessories, parts, and so forth, that the company would jump through hoops and FedEx them whatever they needed. And so he felt like this big national manufacturer has my back. I can pick up the phone and get a hold of somebody, and they can realize I'm in a jam, I need something, where my expectation is I will never get that kind. I want it at most manufacturers. I wouldn't know who to call. If I did have the phone number of my local rep, could they actually get something done, or are they going to run into a large bureaucratic maze? So if you feel that your company is somebody that will jump through hoops for the customer at a moment's notice, that's a real benefit that you should be sure to let the facilities manager know about when you do that. Now, let's talk about new construction. I find that a typical new construction commercial call Certainly you're going around and you're calling on architects and you're perhaps doing lunch and learns. Perhaps you subscribe to Dodge and you find out about a project upcoming, or you just find out through the grapevine about a project, and you then zero in on, I've got to go talk to this architect. Or perhaps you're a little more advanced and you've learned this is going to be a design build project and you're going to go start with the general contractor. In any case, though, what I find is that the building material manufacturer salesperson focuses on two things. They focus on, we'll say, the architect, and they focused on the building or the project. And they're only talking about those two things. And what they forget to ask the architect is, tell me about the owner that awarded you this project. Why did they choose you? If they're extremely happy when this building is completed, what has happened? What do you think the owner, and when I say owner, there's certainly, you can think about owner that writes the checks, but the owner also has, most owners have an operations or facilities person that's right there beside them, or an important part of their team. So it's bringing the owner into the discussion, and whether you actually meet with the owner or not, but it's having the architect go, oh, this building material company actually cares about the owner. Where most building material companies care about, there's a building that needs a whole bunch of my product. Now, how do I talk this architect into my product is better? And what the real motivating factor, or one of the real motivating factors of an architect, is he would like to have that owner be very happy, because they'll end up with a building that word of mouth will spread around that they did a good job, or the other is, in today's world, one owner can 6 months later have another project. And if it's been a good experience, they're going to, very likely come back to this architect. So think about, from the architect standpoint, saying, I'm here. You can say, I'm here to help you build a better building. I'm here to help you reduce cost. I'm here to help the owner save energy. But if you really look at another avenue to go down is, tell me about the owner, to the architect. All of a sudden the architect goes, this building material manufacturer cares about meeting the owner's needs in terms of how the owner described them to me. Like, I would like a building with the lowest operating cost. I would like a building that's extremely green. I want a building that I can build up, but I can build very fast. You may not like to hear this, but you also have owners who say, I want a building that I can, 6 months after it's completed, I plan on selling it. Well, he cares less about long-term operating costs or warranties or maintenance, because he's going to sell the building. And that happens. There's also buildings where they're actually, they're not looking, this building's going to be here for 50 or 100 years. They're looking at buildings that they may continue to own, but they're seeing the life of the building is maybe 10 years. So it's understanding from the architect's perspective, what is the owner looking for? And if the architect is to do an outstanding job for the owner, what have they done? And how can you help them do that? One of the things that I found quite effective is to enable the architect to go to the facilities manager or owner with an unexpected solution, something that had not been on the radar screen before. Because many people think that a brick is a brick, a roof is a roof, a window is a window, a furnace is a furnace. And when you help them take a new view, a new perspective on your product category and go in, it's even if the owner and the architect in the end decide not to use your product, it is a win-win for the architect, because the owner goes, wow, I wouldn't have expected the architect to have considered this option and bring it to me to discuss. Every other architect would be in a hurry to make a decision and probably cutting and pasting specs from previous jobs. I don't want this to bleed into architectural sales call, which is a whole other world. The important thing I'm trying to bring here is the importance of the facilities manager, not only in existing buildings, but in the role more and more that they're playing in terms of new construction. You can decide whether or not you would find out from the architect who the owner is and go directly to the owner at that point. The architect might not like that, feel like you're going around them and, subverting their authority or their position. But there's nothing wrong, certainly, with going to owners that are going to be building things, perhaps before you go to the architect. Now, you got to walk a fine line there that the owner is not forcing the architect to use your product, but you are raising their awareness of your product category. Because once again, just like the architect, the facilities manager in an existing or new situation has 1,000 choices to make or more. And so they can't really be an expert in many of them. If they have had bad experiences with roofing in the past, they probably have a pretty high knowledge level of what has worked or not worked for them in the past with roofing. But as you go away from things, mainly things that have not had a problem, they literally don't know a lot about them because they don't have to. And so this is an area where you can come in and make the consideration of your type of product much more important than it has been in the past, and then start to point out why you and your company are providing the best solutions. With facilities managers, as I keep telling people, or one of my basic philosophies is that rather than viewing yourself as a salesman, your goal should be to become a trusted guide to the facilities manager. Someone in an ideal world, whether or not they're going to buy your product, they're going to buy your competitor's product, but they have a question that ideally you would want them to reach out to you to get that question answered. Now, in the long run, that's really going to pay off. But you have to have knowledge and be willing to be curious about them and their business, their type of building, that you learn a little. And you're probably going to have to do this on your own, because I find very few companies do a good job of providing training about customers like facilities managers or training about types of buildings. They'll simply look at, if I was selling doors, a hotel needs, 1,000, 2,000 doors. So that's a great thing. Here's an architect designing a new hotel. Go sell them. And that's about as much input or direction as you get. You probably have a lot of training in what makes a good door. You probably have had some basic training on the rules of how to be a great salesman that I find too many times are you could sell tires, cars, refrigerators, or doors, that they don't really, there's no real distinction. And it's good to have that product training. It's essential. And the other is it's good to have basic, we'll say, sales training. But what's missing is customer training and type of building training. And you're going to have to take that on yourself. So this is something that most building material salesmen do such a poor job that it is easy, really easy, for you to become a rock star salesman by simply applying yourself. As I said before, if your company simply looks at every building as a prospect, you on your own should take it upon yourself to pick a target that works, a type of building that works for you. You see like a lot of healthcare opportunity, hospitals, office buildings, whatever type of strip malls, whatever type of restaurants, whatever type of building it is, and take it upon yourself to learn a lot. And it won't take you much that you will know much more than any of your competitive salesperson. Now, the other one that I find salespeople are reluctant to do, and that is another way to learn, is literally to call up a facilities manager and say, I would appreciate a little of your time to mentor me. I am trying to learn more about the needs of a facilities manager in a university. Could I come out and buy you a cup of coffee? Could I have 30 minutes of your time? I have a lot of questions. I want to be a better source of solutions to facilities managers at universities. And you will find that, at least 80% of the people will really welcome, because they tell me that unfortunately most sales calls from building material salespeople are a waste of their time. And they look and say, there's 30 minutes gone that I will never get back, and it was useless to me. So anything they can do, they tell me, to make better building material salespeople, they're very interested in doing. And all they're looking for is a sincere interest on your part. You can also do the same thing, go to the architect, go to the facilities manager who represents the building, and just ask them to tell you about that, as well as I laid out earlier, the idea of reading. So there are probably 5 or 6 online healthcare magazines. There's probably Healthcare Facilities Management magazine. Almost all of these you can subscribe for free online, and you don't have to read them cover to cover. You can literally scan the headlines and you'll start to see that 6 times this year they have written about this subject. How does my product help with that subject or problem? I also like to set up Google Alerts. And so you could have a Google alert of hospital maintenance, let's say, and just, every few days, check it and just see what's popping up. 90% of, maybe 95% of what pops up on there is useless. But that one story out of 10, one story out of 20 is going to be extremely valuable in helping you become a better salesperson to healthcare facilities. Another source of great information to become an expert is on LinkedIn. There are groups, and a company can't join a group, an individual can. So I don't know this for sure, but there's probably a high likelihood that you can look under groups in LinkedIn and probably find Healthcare Facilities Managers Group. And some groups are wide open. Other groups they're closed, which just means you have to apply. They'll look at your profile and they'll say, oh, he provides some helpful information to healthcare, we'll permit him to join. And one of the things I like to do is maybe once a week, just go in there and just scan through what are people talking about in that discussion group. And once again, you're finding things. And it's also a great place, I find, if I'm the director of facilities management for Mayo Clinic in Minneapolis, and maybe you're in Dallas, and I either put a question on the LinkedIn group or a comment, or I share a product I like, that if you on LinkedIn ask that writer a question, that they will, 9 times out of 10, they will respond to you. Well, now you've started a dialogue. Now you've started a relationship. Now, if you're in Dallas, maybe ideally that's the facilities manager for Dallas General Hospital. So those are a number of ways that I think if the facilities manager is an important person in your sales process, an important either influencer or decision maker, you should spend some quality time and back off from, I'm going to go in and close the deal today, which your VP of sales might not like to hear. And first of all, do your homework and really understand their problems, their business, their needs, and look that they really are individual. They have different needs based on what their type of building they're managing or what their owner has been directed them to do. Now, when you do this, you will find that once they believe in you and like you, you will find that sales will just happen without you having to make another call. That surprise business will just show up. There's an independent rep, Thomas Buck in New York City, that taught me the concept of annuity sales. And he calls on people with that intent of being the most knowledgeable sales rep and giving them outstanding service. And he says what I'm doing is putting kind of money in his savings account that pays an annuity in which orders just come out of the blue. And he doesn't have to chase each one. So he focuses on meeting their needs, not trying to shove his product down their throat. So practice some of those things I've talked about today when you're calling on facilities managers. A lot of these same lessons apply to builders, contractors, distributors, lumber dealers. The same thing about trying to learn about their business, learn about their type of building that they're selling into, and just with the goal of, first of all, knowing more about those issues than your competitor, which once again is not very hard to do. It's I don't know what analogy to use, but it's not hard to do. And the end result of that is you will then become the trusted expert or guide that will help them. So another way to look at this is your job is not for you or your product to be the hero. Your job is to make the facilities manager the hero. That was, I went to a workshop a year or so ago, and that really hit me. After having written a book and having people write to me all the time on LinkedIn or just email or stop me at trade shows, it's pretty easy to all of a sudden start to your ego to start to see yourself as the hero. I'm the hero. I'm going to sweep into this company and save things. And I realized I'm not the hero. My job is to make my client the hero. And your job, don't ever lose sight of, is to make your customer the hero. So I hope this has been helpful to you in your future facilities managers calls. And I do welcome, please reach out to me. Let me know that you're listening. Let me know if there's any subjects that you want me to cover in the future. And hopefully I'm going to get back on and stay on this once a week schedule like I do with my Sunday night newsletter. Good luck as you go forward. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this podcast from Mark Mitchell on building materials, sales, and marketing. We hope he gave you some fresh perspectives on how to grow your sales and will listen to future episodes.